Today, I'm going to dive into the number one thing that builds resentment. It builds resentment more than anything else. But I'm also actually not just going to go into the number one thing, I'm going to go into that. And then I'm also going to go into 10 more things that can build resentment. Resentment is such a huge one that sometimes it doesn't get enough airtime because it's not like necessarily the most sexiest of topics, but it is the biggest one that breaks relationships, that causes divorce, that causes issues. And so it's such a good one to listen to. And to be honest, even really great relationships can have small elements to this. So I think arming yourself with the knowledge and understanding, as you're doing right now, is super important. Before I dive into this episode around the number one thing that builds resentment, I'm going to just go into a little weekly share as I've been doing. And this one is probably a seemingly small one, but I think it's been an important one. And I don't know if it applies to you or not. We'll find out. But one thing I've done is I used to always read just personal development books, things where I would gain knowledge, better myself, all of that. I still do that. I think that's great. However, I have started sprinkling in some novels, some random stuff, which is not productive. It feels not productive, as in my past self would have said it's not productive. And it's indulgent, right? It feels super indulgent. I'm gonna be honest. It felt super, oh, what a waste of time. I'm just wasting my time reading something it's just a novel. It gives me joy and it gives me pleasure. So if you are not doing the things that bring you joy and bring you pleasure, because I wasn't for a while back, I was putting those things off. I have started sprinkling them into my weeks here and there. I am a mum, so I don't always get hours. I definitely don't get hours to sit there and read. But what I can get is 10 minutes in the morning or 20 minutes at night. I just find time where I can, right? And I pick it up and I enjoy it. And I read something frivolous and silly because it's fun and it brings me joy. And it's been such a long time since I've done it, which is crazy and silly. But I just wanted to give you permission. If it's something that's frivolous and fun and joy and seems to have no real purpose or meaning or intent, it's not going to progress your life in any way, it's not going to whatever, it's worth it because it brings you joy. Yeah. So this is your permission slip to go and do that frivolous thing that brings you joy. Because I think we can get really caught up in it has to have an outcome, it has to be purposeful, or we don't have time for it because it's frivolous. Like it's that extra thing, right? It's a luxury, it's a little luxury. Make time for the little luxuries, yeah? Because your life, when you have those little luxuries, it builds up and it brings joy and it brings happiness and again contributes to your relationship, your mental health, your well-being, all of the things. So that's my little share for this episode, but I want to get on to resentment. So the number one thing I see that builds and causes resentment is not closing loops. Now, what I mean by that is couples will have 100 conversations that they have not finished that they've started, or maybe it was an argument that they haven't finished. It started and it was never resolved. It was started and it was never fully finished, or both people never felt heard, seen, understood around X issue, or then no one felt like there was a resolution or there was actions associated with it. None of those. And so I wasn't planning on talking to this, but I'm just going to quickly say this. This is where counseling helps because you get the actions, not just the talking. Yeah. And you get to ground it down in both people feeling heard, seen, and understood, which doesn't normally happen if we're real when you're talking on your own with your partner. And it's not necessarily set up for success when we're talking on our own with our partner. So that's why counseling works. And that's why counseling's different. At least the way I do it is different. And so I just want to put that in there. It wasn't actually a part of my episode, but I just I think it's important to know and understand. And it's important to know and understand that you need to close these loops because if you don't close these loops, if you don't close these conversations, if you don't finish them and resolve them, then resentment builds. Resentment builds that you didn't take the time to finish them, didn't take the time to close them. Resentment builds that they're just not close. It's actually like a weight that you carry around unconsciously that you don't even know you have. Sometimes when you close these things, you forgive yourself, you forgive the situation, you forgive the person, you go, like you exhale, like, I didn't even know that I was carrying that around with me. We have to close the tabs in our mind. I often say to couples, sometimes they'll come to me and there's 1,000 tabs open because these are all the issues, here are all the challenges. If we close one down, two down, three down, four down, we've got bandwidth to deal with the bigger ones. So we have to start closing the tabs down in our own minds and in our collective marriage or relationship. Yeah. And so we can have 1,000 open tabs in our relationship and it's heavy and it's not good and it builds resentment. So communicate with each other and close the loops because it is the number one thing I am seeing that builds so much resentment. Now, let me be clear, it's over time. It's not like you have one or two conversations and they're not closed. No, it's not that. That's fine. That happens all the time. Or if it's the silly ones that we don't need to really resolve because we're just tired and cranky and we got snappy and we shouldn't have, that's fine. It's not, it's the bigger stuff that doesn't get addressed. It's the stuff that you don't take the time to talk about, or the stuff that's important to your partner that you don't take the time to talk about. It's so much more than that. Okay. So communicate clearly and talk about it, because when we don't talk about our feelings, our concerns, and our issues, then misunderstandings and resentment can arise. Unresolved conflicts are the biggest one I see with open loops. We just have so many open loops around conflict. It can cause you physical pain. It's not really unconscious pain, right? And they have to be resolved, or the resentment grows and grows. And one day someone's saying, I'm leaving. And you're like, what? And you don't even know why. And I'm telling you why. It's because there's open loops everywhere. There is unresolved conflicts everywhere. If we don't resolve them, then we sometimes suddenly have someone leaving, or we suddenly have a partner tell us we're not happy and we need to do something, right? So don't let that be you, and close those loops, or learn how to close those loops, because it's actually a skill and it's something that every couple needs to learn. Number 3, unbalanced priorities. Often when the mental load is skewed in one direction, or one partner feels constantly burdened with all of the load and the household chores and the childcare and emotional stuff and always fixing the fights and all of the stuff, it can create feelings of unfairness and resentment. Really big one, something we talk about in counseling a lot. Number 4 is feeling underappreciated. Oh my gosh, if I could give couples anything, it would be to feel appreciated. Often, so many people go, my efforts went unnoticed, unappreciated. I did extra stuff and it wasn't taken on board. Like, it's heartbreaking, right? Appreciation goes such a long way. Sincere, meaningful appreciation. Broken promises. Now, phew, this is enormous. If you repeatedly break promises to your partner, it breaks trust. It breaks the level of respect you have for them. Yeah. Don't do it. In a nutshell, just don't do it, right? Like, it's actually damaging and it's actually harmful. And if it's happened, there's some repair work that needs to be done. Super important. Lack of support. If one of you is not feeling supported in your personal goals, dreams, or challenges, this can cause somebody to feel isolated, undervalued, and honestly, it leads to resentment again. So it's really important. How can I support you? What do you need? Ask the questions. Don't guess. Don't pretend and assume you're doing what you should be doing. Sometimes what you're doing is what you would like someone to do for you, but it's not actually what they want. Big tip there. That often happens. Most of the time, it happens in couples. Emotional neglect. So, number 7 is emotional neglect. When emotions, needs are ignored or dismissed, it can lead to feelings of abandonment and resentment. Honestly, you need to talk about the other person's emotions and their emotions and have those chats. That's how you deepen intimacy too. When you can actually talk to each other about the hard stuff and help each other through that and support each other through that. Number 8 is control or dominance. Actually controlling someone or trying to dictate can lead to feelings of a whole lot of feelings of resentment and suffocation. Okay. They need to be free to do what they need to do, just like you need to be too. Of course, in the healthy boundaries, but you get what I'm saying. Number 9 is disrespect or criticism. So, constant criticism, constant disrespect, belittling can really erode your partner's self esteem and create such a deep resentment. That one's super important to make sure we get in check. Number 10 is inconsistent effort. So sometimes we can see the partner's putting more effort in and then it falls off a cliff, right? Or they're engaged in the relationship, then they're disengaged. It can create such feelings of frustration, resentment, hurt, pain. Honestly, we need to be consistent with our partner. You know the saying, the grass is greener where you water it? I think I've used that about 25 million times in the podcast. It's because it's true. Where you put time, energy, focus, and attention, it's great. If you think about work right now, and if you put a lot of energy, time, and effort into work, I bet work is great. At least your boss's perception of you or whatever. Like, work is good. Or you put a lot of time into your health and fitness, I bet you look amazing. Yeah. You put a lot of time into different areas, it's going to get better. It's going to be good. I really want you to think about these things. Think about all of the things that can cause resentment, because what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're actually proactively addressing these things. So it's not like you get into a position and you're like, oh, I should address resentment. Sure, if you're that far gone, get support now. Okay. If you have had so many challenges or the resentment has just been bubbling, you don't know what to do with it, get support ASAP. But if you like, so there's different scenarios, right? If you feel like you're going okay or pretty good, then you can just look at these different things and go, okay, what are we doing to make sure we don't have resentment? Okay. It's really important. So I would love to know, what is the main thing you took from this episode? Please comment below, hit subscribe so you get notified when some new episodes come out. And also please leave a review, as I'd love to know what you think of this episode.